That morning, I only meant to step into the bathroom to brush my teeth. But what I picked up in the sunlight, a tiny foil tab from a birth control pack, buried 9 years of my marriage. I'd had a vasectomy long ago, which meant, if my wife was still taking the pill, there were only 2 possibilities. 1, she was sleeping with someone else. 2, the 2 children who called me Dad had never carried a drop of my blood from the very start. I stood there for a long time. The little foil circle rested in my palm, glinting in the morning light as if mocking me. For 9 years, I thought I knew the woman who slept beside me every night. Maybe I was wrong. I said nothing, asked nothing, showed not a flicker of suspicion. Instead, I prepared to uncover the truth and to face whatever it brought. In a few hours, I would have my answer. And if you've ever felt your heart tighten under the weight of doubt, you'll understand why I had to do this. I stared down at the tiny foil circle again, turning it over between my fingers. It was unmistakable, the backing from a daily birth control pill pack, stamped clearly with the number 2. Tuesday. I knew exactly what that meant. Rachel, my wife, had been on birth control pills for years before I had my vasectomy. We agreed to stop all contraception afterward. I trusted her then, or at least, I thought I did. But now, here I was, holding proof she hadn't stopped. My mind raced with questions. Why? What was she hiding? The house was quiet around me. Sunlight streamed softly through the bathroom window, casting long shadows on the tiled floor. It felt like the calm before a storm. I carefully placed the foil back where I found it, making sure nothing looked disturbed. Because I wasn't ready to confront Rachel. Not yet. I needed answers. And I would get them, no matter what it took. I remembered the day I had the vasectomy clearly. It was a quiet decision we made together. No more children, no more risks. Rachel agreed to stop taking the pill shortly after my procedure. For years that agreement held. No pills, no worries. But now, holding that tiny foil piece, doubt crept in like a shadow. Had she lied to me all this time? Had she been taking those pills in secret? The thought was a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to believe it was just a mistake, a leftover pack accidentally dropped. But deep down, I knew better. The quiet in the house suddenly felt heavier. Every familiar corner seemed to watch me, waiting for my next move. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to find the truth. Why would Rachel still be taking the pill? If it was just a leftover pack, why hide it? The only reason to keep taking birth control after a vasectomy was if she feared getting pregnant. But if I was sterile, then who was she afraid of? The thought hit me hard. Maybe it wasn't about me at all. Maybe there was someone else, someone she didn't want me to know about, a secret she was desperately trying to protect. My mind spiraled with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Was she cheating? Or was there another reason I couldn't see yet? The doubt was suffocating, but I had to stay calm. I had to be methodical, because the next steps I took could either save my family or destroy it completely. That night, I lay awake, torn. Should I confront Rachel? Ask her directly about the pills, about the truth I feared? Or should I keep quiet, watch, and gather evidence first? Part of me wanted answers, clear and honest. But another part knew that asking too soon could shatter everything. I had to be careful. If I was wrong, I'd ruin our marriage for nothing. If I was right, I needed proof that no one could deny. I thought back to all the nights spent perfecting designs at work, how patience and precision had always been my strengths. I decided then I wouldn't act on suspicion. I'd become a silent observer, watching, waiting, collecting facts, until the truth was undeniable. I made a quiet promise to myself to stay calm, to keep my face steady, my words measured. I wouldn't let Rachel see even a flicker of doubt. If she suspected I was onto her, everything could spiral out of control. So I played the part of the devoted husband, smiling, chatting, acting like nothing was wrong. Every day became a careful performance. Behind closed doors, my mind raced. But outside, I was calm, collected, unreadable. It was exhausting but necessary, because if I lost my cool now, I'd lose everything. My family, my sanity, my future. This was just the beginning, and I had to be stronger than ever. The next morning, I walked into the office like any other day. Colleagues greeted me, papers piled on my desk, meetings to attend. But my mind wasn't there. It kept circling back to that tiny foil circle. That simple, shiny piece of metal that had turned my world upside down. I forced myself to focus, to review engineering plans and contracts. Yet every detail blurred as doubts and questions gnawed at me. Was Rachel hiding more than just pills? How long had this been going on? Could I trust anything I'd believed for years? I clenched my fists under the desk. This wasn't just about pills anymore. It was about truth, about betrayal. And I knew that no matter how hard I tried, I wouldn't find peace until I uncovered it. I started searching, carefully, quietly, online for ways to catch the truth. Hidden cameras small enough to blend into the background. DNA test kits that could reveal everything about Ethan and Chloe's parentage. Software that could clone phones to see messages Rachel tried to hide. Each discovery pulled me deeper into a world I never wanted to explore, but I had no choice. If the truth was buried somewhere, I was determined to dig it out. I bookmarked sites, read reviews, compared prices, all while pretending to focus on work. Every tool I found was a potential key to unlocking the mystery, and I ordered them all, having them shipped discreetly to my office. No way Rachel could connect the dots. This was the start of my silent investigation, and there was no turning back. I placed the orders one by one, making sure nothing looked suspicious. Hidden cameras disguised as smoke detectors, tiny voice recorders, DNA test kits, phone cloning software, all of it. I had everything sent to my office, not home. There was no way Rachel would connect these packages to me. At work, I kept a casual demeanor, joking with colleagues, pretending all was normal. Inside, though, I was preparing for a battle I hadn't signed up for. Every shipment that arrived felt like a step closer to the truth, but also a step deeper into uncertainty. Still, I told myself, better to face the truth now, no matter how painful, than to live a lie for years. This was the line I had to cross, and I was ready. A heavy weight settled on my chest every time I thought about what I was doing. Was I invading her privacy? Betraying her trust? Even before knowing the truth? Guilt gnawed at me, but beneath it all was a stronger feeling, the need for answers. I couldn't live in uncertainty any longer. I needed facts, cold, undeniable facts, before making any decision. This wasn't just about suspicion anymore. It was about protecting myself, my future, and maybe even the children. I took a deep breath and pushed the guilt aside. Whatever came next, I would face it head on. Because sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we most need to know. The packages arrived over the next few days, small, discreet, unassuming. I waited until Rachel was out, then moved quickly but carefully. First, the bathroom, where I'd found that foil. I hid a tiny camera inside the smoke detector, positioning it to capture every corner without being noticed. Next, the bedroom. I placed another camera near the dresser, angled toward the bed and the vent where I suspected secrets might be hidden. Finally, the living room, our family's gathering spot. A third camera nestled among the books on the shelf, blending seamlessly with the decor. Each installation brought a knot of anxiety to my stomach. Was this really necessary? Was I crossing a line I couldn't come back from? But I told myself, this was about the truth, and I needed to see it for myself. That night, after Ethan and Chloe were asleep, I took out the DNA test kits. The kits came with simple cheek swabs, easy enough not to wake them. I gently swabbed Ethan's cheek, careful not to disturb his peaceful sleep. Then Chloe, her soft breaths steady and calm. Finally, I swabbed my own cheek, the sterile cotton cool against my skin. It felt strange, like I was collecting pieces of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to complete. I packaged the samples carefully, following the instructions to the letter. Tomorrow, I'd send them off and wait. Wait for the results that could either shatter me or set me free. In the quiet of that night, I wondered how much longer I could hold on to hope. But I had to try, because some truths had to be faced, no matter the cost. The next morning, I dropped the sealed package at the courier service. The DNA samples were now on their way to the lab. The technicians there would analyze every detail, every genetic marker. I was told the results would come back in about 48 hours. 2 long days of waiting for answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Back at the office, I tried to focus on my projects, but the clock seemed to tick slower than ever. Every email notification, every phone buzz made my heart race. I replayed every moment I'd spent with Rachel, Ethan, and Chloe. Could all those years have been built on a lie? The uncertainty was suffocating, but I had to hold on, because soon the truth would arrive, and with it, a chance to finally see what was real. I watched Rachel closely those days. Her routine didn't change. She got up early, made coffee, packed lunches for Ethan and Chloe. She worked from home some days, answered emails, and called clients. Evenings were spent helping with homework, cooking dinner, bedtime stories. On the surface, everything seemed normal. No secret phone calls, no sudden trips, no signs of guilt or panic. If she was hiding something, she was doing a damn good job of it. That only made the knot in my stomach tighten. Because the calm was more terrifying than chaos. It meant the truth was deeper than I imagined, and finding it wouldn't be easy. That evening, I finally reviewed the footage from the bathroom camera. There she was, Rachel, standing at the sink, the morning sun filtering through the window. She reached into a small, neatly organized pill box. Carefully, she picked up a tiny white pill and swallowed it, her face calm and focused. Every morning, without fail. The proof was undeniable. She was still taking the birth control pills. No mistakes, no accidents. Just a secret she'd been keeping right under my nose. My heart sank deeper with every frame. The quiet betrayal was louder than any shouting match could ever be. A few days later, while reviewing more footage, I noticed something else. Rachel pulling out a small phone, not her usual one, from a hidden pocket in her purse. She checked the screen quickly, eyes darting around the room. Then, carefully, she opened the vent near the bedroom window. Without hesitation, she slipped the phone inside the narrow metal duct and closed the cover. A secret phone, hidden in plain sight. She kept it away from me, from everyone. That explained why my earlier attempts to access her messages had come up empty. She was covering her tracks meticulously. The realization hit me like a punch. If she went to such lengths to hide a phone, what was on it? Who was she talking to? And how deep did this secret really run? I waited patiently for the right moment. One evening, Rachel went into the shower, water running loudly. I seized the chance. Quietly, I approached the vent in the bedroom. With trembling hands, I carefully opened the cover. There it was, the hidden phone, cold and silent. I grabbed it quickly, heart pounding in my chest. Back in my office, I connected the phone to my laptop and began cloning its data. Messages, photos, call logs, all copied without a hitch. Time felt suspended as I worked, knowing what I might find. Once the process finished, I returned the phone to its secret place. I closed the vent just as Rachel stepped out of the shower. She glanced inside, curious, but I smiled and acted casual. She never suspected a thing. Now I held the key to the truth. That night I sat alone in my office, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating the room. I opened the cloned phone's data folder, hands shaking slightly. Then I started reading. Text messages between Rachel and a man. Their words were explicit, filled with stolen moments and secret meetings. They joked about how I had no idea, how easily I was fooled. Plans for rendezvous in hotels, whispered promises, and declarations of desire. No names mentioned, only hints that the man was close to her, someone she trusted. Each message stabbed deeper than the last. The woman I loved had built an entire secret life, right under my nose. I felt a cold wave of betrayal wash over me, overwhelming and relentless. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to keep reading, because this was the truth I needed to face. The messages never mentioned a name, but the details were clear enough. They planned secret meetings at a downtown hotel, times carefully chosen to avoid suspicion. Rachel teased him, saying, "Can you believe Mark doesn't suspect a thing?" There was laughter between them, a cruel inside joke at my expense. Their conversations revealed familiarity, trust, and a dangerous closeness. It wasn't just a fling, it was something ongoing, deliberate. Every word in those texts cut deeper, confirming the nightmare I feared. I sat back, trying to process it all. How long had this been going on? How many moments had been stolen from my family? The weight of betrayal pressed down harder than ever before. But beneath the pain, a resolve began to form. I would find out who he was, and I would make sure the truth came out, no matter the cost. Shock hit me like a freight train. Pain sliced through my chest, sharper than anything I'd ever felt. But I couldn't let it show, not yet. Not when I was still piecing together the full picture. Every tear I fought back, every pang of anger I swallowed, was fuel. Fuel to keep going, to dig deeper, to uncover everything Rachel wanted hidden. I locked the laptop, took a deep breath, and forced myself to act normal. Because this wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about survival. And no matter how much it hurt, I had to stay one step ahead. The investigation had only just begun. I knew I couldn't carry this burden alone. So I reached out to Laura Bennett, my trusted colleague and friend. I told her everything. The foil, the pills, the secret phone, the messages. She listened quietly, her eyes filled with concern but unwavering support. After a long pause, she said, "Mark, you need a lawyer, someone who knows the system and can protect you." She recommended Sandra Miller, a seasoned divorce attorney with a reputation for handling tough cases. Laura offered to make the introduction and help me prepare. Her calm confidence was exactly what I needed in that storm of emotions. For the first time, I felt a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could fight back and win. Sandra sat across from me in her office, calm and professional. She laid out the options clearly without judgment. "Mark, you can choose to stay silent, try to keep things as they are. That might preserve some peace, but it leaves you vulnerable. Or you can file for an amicable divorce, clean, quiet, and hopefully respectful. But there's a third choice, the nuclear option." She leaned in, voice low but firm. "That means filing for adultery, fraud, and going after everything you're entitled to, financially and legally. It's aggressive, it's messy, and it will turn your world upside down." I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me, but deep inside, I knew what I had to do. There was no going back. After a long silence, I looked Sandra in the eye. "I want the nuclear option. I want to fight. To gather every piece of evidence, every scrap of proof. To protect what's mine, my assets, my future." She nodded slowly, understanding the storm I was ready to unleash. "Then we'll build a case no one can ignore. We'll file for adultery, fraud, and make sure you're legally shielded." I felt a strange mix of relief and dread wash over me. This was war, but it was a war I was prepared to fight. Because staying silent meant losing everything I ever cared about, and I wasn't willing to lose without a fight. Laura sat down with me, a determined look in her eyes. "We need to keep Rachel off guard," she said. "If she suspects you're onto her, she'll cover her tracks even better." Together, we crafted a plan. I would tell her I had an unexpected business trip to Portland, urgent and confidential. Laura helped me draft emails and calendar invites to make it believable. The trip would give me time and space to dig deeper without Rachel watching my every move. It felt like a delicate game of chess. Every step had to be calculated. One wrong move, and everything could fall apart. But with Laura's support, I felt ready. ready to take this next step. Because sometimes, to catch the truth, you have to be smarter than the lies. While I was away on the Portland trip, I hired a private investigator to keep an eye on Rachel. I needed someone who could watch without being noticed, someone who could gather facts where I couldn't. The investigator was discreet, professional, exactly what I needed. Reports started coming in. Rachel meeting a man late at night, leaving the house when I wasn't home. The man was never named, but the details painted a clear picture. The weight of betrayal settled heavier each time I read the updates. But at least now, I wasn't alone in this fight. Every new report was a piece of the puzzle, slowly revealing the full image. It was painful. It was exhausting. But I was determined to see this through, no matter what. One evening, the call came. The private investigator's voice was calm, but serious. "Mark, I have something you need to hear. According to the surveillance, Rachel let a man into the house while you were away. Not just once, but several times over the past few weeks. The man wasn't just a visitor, he had a key. He entered freely as if he lived there." I felt a cold wave wash over me. This wasn't a secret fling anymore. This was a full-blown betrayal, right under my roof. The man's presence shattered every illusion I held on to, and now, the reality was undeniable. The footage was clear. Late one evening, the man walked through the front door, greeted warmly by Rachel. He smiled, relaxed like he belonged. But then, the moment that shattered me, Ethan ran up to him, eyes bright and trusting, calling out, "Daddy Tom!" The man bent down, wrapping his arms around Ethan with a familiarity that crushed my heart. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a family secret, a truth kept hidden from me all along. I sat back, stunned. Every doubt, every fear crystallized into cold, brutal reality. The man wasn't just a visitor. He was the father of my son. And maybe Chloe too. My world unraveled in that single, devastating moment. I stared at the footage again, trying to process what I was seeing. The man's face was familiar, but it took a moment to place him. Tom Reynolds, Rachel's direct supervisor at work. The very man she reported to every day. Not just some secret lover. He was part of her professional life, her daily routine. The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just personal betrayal. It was tangled in her career, her world. A web of lies stretching far beyond our home. How long had this been going on? How deep did this secret run? The questions burned in my mind, but there was no escaping the truth. Tom Reynolds was the man behind the betrayal, and now I had to decide what to do next. Back in Sandra's office, I laid out everything: the footage, the messages, the hidden phone. She listened carefully, then pulled up the company's employee handbook. Scrolling through the pages, her eyes paused at the section on workplace relationships. "There it is," she said. "A strict non-fraternization policy. No romantic or sexual relationships allowed between supervisors and subordinates. Violating this policy could lead to serious consequences, not just for Tom and Rachel, but for the entire company." "That means," Sandra explained, "we can file a lawsuit against the company for allowing this to happen, and pursue legal action against Tom for alienation of affection." It was more than I expected, legal leverage I hadn't considered before. Suddenly, the fight wasn't just personal anymore. It was also a battle to hold those responsible accountable. The pieces began to fall into place. With Sandra's help, I requested more detailed reports from the private investigator. The patterns, the timing, the intimacy caught on camera, all pointed to one brutal conclusion. Tom Reynolds wasn't just Rachel's lover. He was very likely the biological father of Ethan and Chloe. The children I had raised, loved, and believed were mine. Now that belief felt like a fragile lie. Sandra advised me to wait for the DNA test results for absolute certainty. But even without them, the evidence was damning. The truth was more painful than I could have imagined, and I braced myself for what came next. Because knowing wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of a long, difficult battle. 2 days later, the email arrived. I stared at the screen, hands trembling. The results from the lab were clear, unmistakable. Neither Ethan nor Chloe were my biological children. My world shattered in that instant. Years of love, sleepless nights, first steps, first words, all tied to a truth that wasn't mine. The shock was unbearable, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. Yet beneath the pain, a cold clarity emerged. I had the proof, no more doubt, no more what-ifs. Now, I had to face reality head-on and decide how to fight for my future, whatever that might look like. The shock hit me like a tidal wave, overwhelming, relentless. Pain and anger collided inside me, each feeding the other. How could Rachel do this? How could she keep such a cruel secret for so long? Years of betrayal buried beneath the surface of our marriage. I felt betrayed, not just by her, but by the life I thought we had built together. Anger burned hot. Anger at the lies, the deceit, the stolen years. But amid the fury was a deeper pain, grief for the family I lost. I sat alone, fists clenched, trying to hold back tears that threatened to fall. This was the lowest point, the heartbreak I never saw coming. Yet somewhere beneath the wreckage, a fierce determination took root. I would fight back, and I would not let this be the end of my story. Sandra wasted no time. She began compiling a detailed legal case against Rachel and Tom. The charges were serious: adultery, fraud, and emotional distress. Rachel had deceived me, not only in our marriage, but in the very paternity of the children. Against Tom, Sandra pursued an alienation of affection claim, a rarely used but powerful legal tool. It held him accountable for breaking up our family and causing immeasurable pain. Every piece of evidence, the footage, messages, DNA results, was organized meticulously. Sandra assured me that with this case, I had a strong chance to protect my rights and seek justice. It was a weapon I hadn't expected but was ready to wield. The fight was on, and I was no longer a helpless victim. Sandra warned me the fight wouldn't just be emotional, it would be financial. Rachel could go after everything I owned, so I had to protect my assets. I decided to buy out my business partner's shares, consolidating control of the company. Every dollar I could spare, I funneled into the business account. Money behind a corporate firewall, safe from any claims she might try to make. It wasn't easy, taking out loans, cashing savings, risking stability, but it was necessary. Because if I lost the company, I'd lose not just my livelihood, but the futures of over 100 employees depending on me. This was more than a legal battle. It was a fight to keep my life intact, and I was determined to win, no matter the cost. Knowing what was coming, I moved quickly to sell our family home. It was painful, walls filled with memories now tinged with betrayal. But protecting my assets came first. I transferred as much of my personal wealth as possible into secure accounts and investments. The timing was critical. Before the divorce papers were even filed, I made sure my financial position was as strong as it could be. Every transaction was calculated, legal, and deliberate. I wanted to make sure Rachel couldn't claim anything beyond what was fair. Losing the house stung, but it was a necessary sacrifice. The house was no longer a home. It was a battleground, and I was ready for the fight ahead. With Sandra's guidance, we prepared every document meticulously. The divorce petition, affidavits, evidence packets, all assembled with precision. We scheduled the official service of process, making sure Rachel and Tom would be formally notified at the same time. Timing was crucial. We wanted to hit hard and fast, leaving no room for maneuver. Every signature was double-checked, every detail confirmed. I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve as the hour approached. This was more than paperwork. It was the beginning of the end of a painful chapter. When the papers were finally served, I knew nothing would ever be the same. But for the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of control. I was taking back my life. At exactly 10 a.m., the process servers arrived. One delivered the divorce papers directly into Rachel's hands. Another handed Tom his summons and complaint. A third served the company's human resources department with the lawsuit. The weight of those documents was more than paper. It was the final unraveling of everything I once believed. I imagined Rachel reading the accusations, shock and anger mixing on her face, Tom receiving notice that his secret was exposed, and the company blindsided by the legal storm about to hit them. That morning marked the point of no return. The fight had officially begun, and there was no turning back. Minutes after the papers were served, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was sharp, filled with disbelief and pain. "Mark, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" She couldn't believe what I'd done. "How can you just walk away from your children?" Her words hit me harder than any legal battle. She saw the kids, not the betrayal. To her, I was abandoning my family. I tried to explain, tried to make her understand the truth behind the lies, but she wasn't ready to hear it. The call ended with a painful silence. I was caught between two worlds, the man fighting for justice and the son trying to hold on to family, and neither side offered comfort. I couldn't let her continue. I cut in, my voice steady but cold. "They're not my children." There was a pause, long and heavy. "I raised them, loved them, but the DNA test doesn't lie. Rachel lied to me for years." My mother's breathing grew shallow, disbelief thick in the silence. "I know this sounds cruel, but it's the truth. I can't pretend anymore." For the first time, the distance between us felt real, like a chasm too wide to cross. I wanted her to understand, to see what I was seeing, but all I heard was the heartbreaking silence of a family unraveling. My phone buzzed again. It was Rachel. Her voice trembled on the line, full of fear, desperation, maybe guilt. "Mark, we need to talk." For a moment I hesitated, the weight of everything pressing down on me. But then I steadied myself. I couldn't afford to be weak. Not now. "I don't want to talk," I said, my voice firm, controlled. "If you have anything to say it through your lawyer." Silence on the other end. "I'm done with the lies," I added. "This ends here." I hung up, feeling the finality settle like a cold stone in my chest. The battle was no longer personal, it was legal. And I was ready. Rachel showed up at the house unannounced, eyes swollen from crying, desperation written all over her face. She pleaded, trying to explain, to apologize, to make sense of the chaos she'd caused. But I wasn't listening. Every word felt like poison, every excuse a fresh wound. I stood firm, cold and unyielding. "I don't want to hear it," I said, voice low but resolute. "This isn't about explanations anymore. It's about truth." She reached out, but I stepped back. "This house isn't yours anymore." Her shoulders slumped, the fight draining from her. I could feel the weight of years crashing down between us, but there was no turning back, for either of us. I didn't stop at Rachel. The nanny, the one who had been with us for years, was part of this deception too. She knew about the affair, about the children's true parentage, and she chose to stay silent. I called her into my office. Looking her straight in the eyes, I said, "You knew. You covered for her." Her face went pale, words failing her. "Effective immediately, you're fired," she pleaded, but I had no patience left. "You're complicit in this betrayal." Then I turned to Rachel, who was watching quietly. "You're out of this house, and so is she. Both of you." I meant it. No more lies, no more silence. It was time to cut the ties that bound us to this broken family. Rachel's voice rose, trembling with anger and desperation. "You can't just throw me out," she shouted. I held up my hand, cutting her off firmly. "This isn't up for debate. This is my home too, and I'm done living a lie." Her eyes filled with tears, but I remained unmoved. "You lied for years. You betrayed me. I won't let you stay here and pretend everything is fine." The tension in the room was suffocating, but I knew this was necessary, even if it broke both our hearts. "Pack your things," I said, voice cold and final. "Leave, now." She hesitated, then slowly began gathering her belongings. The chapter was closing, whether she wanted it to or not. Rachel moved through the house, her hands trembling as she packed a suitcase. Ethan and Chloe clung to her, tears streaming down their small faces. "Mommy, don't go," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. Chloe sobbed quietly, burying her face in Rachel's shoulder. I stood across the room, heart-wrenching, but eyes fixed elsewhere. I couldn't bear to see their pain, not like this, not now. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, felt cold and empty. Every sound of packing echoed like a countdown to the end. I swallowed hard, pushing down the ache in my chest. Because sometimes, love means letting go, even when it hurts the most. Once they left, the silence hit me like a tidal wave. I sank into the nearest chair, head in my hands, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. The grief, the betrayal, the emptiness. It all crashed down at once. I barely noticed the soft knock on the door. Laura stepped in quietly, her presence calm and steady. Without a word, she sat beside me and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Her support was a lifeline in the storm. She didn't try to fix things or offer empty words, just sat with me, letting me feel what I needed to feel. In that moment, I realized I wasn't alone, and maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward healing. Not long after, I received notice that Rachel had filed a restraining order against me. She claimed I was causing her emotional harm and danger. For a moment, I felt the weight of uncertainty, but Sandra was ready. She reviewed every detail, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. With confidence, she filed a motion to dismiss the restraining order. She argued that I was the one who had been wronged, the one who uncovered the deception and sought justice. At the hearing, Sandra presented our evidence clearly and firmly. The judge listened carefully and swiftly overturned Rachel's restraining order. It was a crucial victory, a moment that reinforced my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for the truth. And the law was finally on my side. Soon after the restraining order was overturned, the fallout began. The company launched an internal investigation into Tom's conduct. With the evidence we'd provided, they had no choice but to act. Tom Reynolds was fired for violating the company's strict non-fraternization policy. His actions not only breached workplace ethics, but exposed the company to legal risk. As a result, the company faced a lawsuit for failing to enforce its policies and allowing the affair to jeopardize the work environment. The legal battle extended beyond just personal matters. It now threatened the entire corporate structure. This was more than retribution. It was accountability, a clear message that such betrayals would not be tolerated anywhere. As the lawsuits progressed, both the company and Tom realized the gravity of the situation. Negotiations began behind closed doors. Eventually, they offered a settlement to resolve the claims quietly. The company agreed to a substantial financial payout to cover damages caused by their negligence. Tom, facing both legal pressure and personal disgrace, also agreed to compensate for the alienation of affection claim. The settlements didn't erase the pain or betrayal, but they brought some measure of justice and financial security. For me, it was a step toward rebuilding what was lost. Money couldn't heal the wounds, but it could help me regain control of my life. And in the midst of chaos, that felt like a victory worth fighting for. After everything came to light, I found myself avoiding Ethan and Chloe, not because I didn't love them, but because every moment with them was a painful reminder. They were innocent, yet caught in the middle of a storm I never wanted. Seeing their faces brought a mix of love and unbearable heartache. I feared I'd break down, that the flood of emotions would consume me. So, I kept my distance. I told myself it was for my own sanity, for the healing I desperately needed. But deep down, I knew it was one of the hardest choices I'd ever made. Choosing distance over closeness. Love overshadowed by betrayal. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I needed to survive. Weeks turned into months. The lawsuit moved steadily through the courts. Complex, exhausting, but necessary. Every hearing, every filing brought me closer to closure. With Sandra's expertise guiding me, I felt more in control than I had in a long time. Financially, the settlements and careful planning protected me. My assets were secure, and the company remained stable, safeguarding the livelihoods of my employees. Though the pain of betrayal lingered, I knew I was building a new foundation, one based on truth and resilience. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. Hope that I could reclaim my life and maybe someday find peace again. The day the divorce was finalized, I sat quietly at my desk. The judge's decree arrived in an official envelope, legal confirmation that it was over. I was free, legally severed from the woman who had betrayed me so deeply. A mix of relief and sorrow washed over me. Relief that the nightmare had ended. Sorrow for the family that once was, now broken beyond repair. I allowed myself a moment to grieve, to acknowledge the loss. But I also felt a flicker of something new, hope, the chance to rebuild, to start fresh on my own terms. This was the closing of one chapter, and the opening of another, uncertain, but mine to write. I sold the old house, not just a building, but a vault of memories, now tainted by betrayal. Every room held ghosts of a past I desperately wanted to leave behind. With the sale finalized, I packed what little I could and moved out. Laura offered me a place to stay, a temporary refuge from the chaos. Her home was quiet, safe, a stark contrast to the turmoil I'd escaped. Though we weren't close outside of work, her kindness felt like a lifeline. I was grateful for the sanctuary, even if it was just a pause in the storm. In that calm, I began to think about what came next. A future free from lies but filled with uncertainty. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to breathe. Laura was a constant presence, steady and unwavering. She checked in regularly, making sure I ate, rested, and stayed grounded. At work, she shielded me from unnecessary drama and offered clear-headed advice. Outside the office, she listened without judgment, offering a shoulder to lean on. Her quiet strength became my anchor in the storm. I began to see her not just as a colleague, but as someone who genuinely cared. Her kindness wasn't loud or flashy, it was the kind that healed without words. Slowly, I started to trust again, to believe that maybe not all relationships ended in betrayal. With Laura by my side, the future felt less daunting. And for the first time, I allowed myself to hope. One afternoon, the call came out of nowhere. It was Laura, her voice tense and shaken. "Mark, you need to hear this. Tom Reynolds, Rachel's lover, the man who had shattered my life, was dead. His wife had caught him red-handed with Rachel. In a fit of rage and despair, she shot him. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. A strange mix of shock, disbelief, and, I won't lie, some bitter relief. Justice had come in a brutal, tragic form. I stared at the phone, numb. The man who had taken so much from me was gone. But the pain and scars he left behind, those would never fade. I didn't feel sorrow for Tom. No sympathy. Not after everything he'd done. His actions had destroyed lives. Mine, my children's, countless others. Yet despite the tragedy, there was a strange sense of closure. A circle closing that had been left open for too long. His death was the final, brutal punctuation on a painful chapter. It didn't erase the wounds or the betrayal, but it marked an end to the lies, the secrets, the deceit. And as I sat in silence, I realized sometimes justice isn't clean or kind, it's just final. A few days later, an envelope arrived at my office. Inside was the final settlement check, payment from Tom's share, and the company's agreement. The amount was significant, enough to cover my debts and secure my financial future. Holding that check felt surreal, like a bittersweet victory. Money couldn't undo the past or heal the pain, but it meant freedom from financial worry, a chance to rebuild without the shadows of betrayal hanging over me. I exhaled deeply, a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope. The fight had taken everything, but maybe, just maybe, it had given me something in return. With the settlement behind me, I finally had space to think about what lay ahead. No more debts looming over my head. Financial freedom, something I hadn't felt in years. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild on my own terms. I could focus on healing, on rediscovering who I was outside of betrayal and pain. The past would always be there, a scar I'd carry. But the future, my future, was mine to shape. I wasn't tied down by lies or loss anymore. For the first time, hope wasn't just a flicker. It was a flame, and I was ready to see where it would lead. One evening, after a long day, Laura stayed behind as the office emptied. She looked at me, her eyes soft but steady. "I've been here for you, Mark, through every dark moment." Her voice was quiet, sincere. Without hesitation, she leaned in and kissed me, gentle, reassuring, full of promise. Pulling back, she smiled, a hint of hope shining through. "I want to build something real with you, something honest." For the first time in a long time, I felt warmth, not just from her lips, but from the possibility of new beginnings. Her words stirred something inside me, a fragile hope that maybe not all love ends in heartbreak. I smiled back, knowing the future was uncertain, but that at least I wouldn't face it alone. As Laura's words lingered, my mind drifted back to something my doctor had said months ago. "Vasectomy reversals have a high success rate," he told me quietly. At the time, it felt like a distant possibility, maybe even a mistake. But now, hearing Laura's hope, I realized something new was possible. Fatherhood wasn't off the table forever. Maybe one day I could have a family on my own terms. The thought filled me with a cautious optimism I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since the betrayal, I saw a path forward. Uncertain, yes, but full of promise. And that fragile hope was enough to keep me moving. Because sometimes, the hardest endings lead to the most unexpected beginnings. Looking back, it's incredible how one tiny piece of foil, just a small circle from a birth control pack, changed everything. It shattered my world, tore apart my family, and left me feeling like I had nothing left. But through that darkness, I found freedom. A chance to rebuild, to rediscover myself, and to embrace a future I never imagined. I won't lie. The pain over Ethan and Chloe still lingers deep inside me. They were a part of my life for so long, and letting go hasn't been easy. But sometimes, holding on hurts more than releasing. I've come to accept that some things are beyond my control, and in that acceptance, there's peace. Maybe a broken heart is the price we pay for true freedom, and if that's the cost, then I'm ready to pay it.